An eye-patched figure tells Flaffer to rejoice, she's now a free woman. The scene shifts to show the former Saint Flaffer kneeling on the ground as the proclamation rings out that she's hereby banished. So here's the thing, Flaffer was the saint of the Kingdom of Harvest. A saint is basically someone who wields holy power through prayer, and she could turn root-rotting rains into clear, sunny skies and transform barren wastelands into fertile soil. Pretty much an existence that was indispensable to the nation. Flaffer grew up in an orphanage, and when she was 3, the orphanage was set to be demolished and everyone but her was exiled from the country. Since she possessed holy power, she was brought to the royal palace, but here's where things get dark. She was forced into harsh confinement within the dungeon, fed only once a day and malnourished, struggling to maintain even basic stamina. It was there that her holy power was lost. But on the exposed earth of the dungeon floor, Flaffer was secretly growing vegetables, managing to supplement her lacking nutrition this way. Then His Majesty Jarfel found out about it. Flaffer is caught with her vegetables and reacts in shock. Someone accuses her of using her holy power for selfish gain, and the plants are destroyed. Jarfel tells her that if she has time to play at being a farmer, then she should use that power for the sake of the kingdom. Meanwhile, a guard examines the vegetables and comments that they're actually very good. Since Flaffer can no longer use her holy powers, she's forbidden from growing vegetables. A guard arrives for feeding time and tells her to savor every bite of the rotten food, calling her useless trash and adding that it's plenty good enough for her. Flaffer looks at the spoiled food, relieved that it's still edible since she knows she has to get at least a little something in her stomach. Then the door to Flaffer's cell opens and cold rain pours in. She stands there completely drenched, water streaming down her face and body as the sudden exposure to the elements. Meanwhile, Jarfel looks down at Flaffer's collapsed, malnourished body with disgust. He says she's just as scrawny and creepy as he thought, telling her she doesn't even have value as an idiot and calling her a complete waste of space. Flaffer lies there in pain, feeling sick as Jarfel continues, saying that he went out of his way to give a piece of trash like her the title of saintess, and yet instead of repaying that debt, she hoarded her holy power all for herself. Jarfel announces he'll hand down a suitable punishment and tells her to prepare herself. The whip comes down hard and fast. Flaffer is struck repeatedly, tears streaming down her face as the punishment is carried out. Once the beating is done, Jarfel tells her that now that her holy power is gone, she's nothing but trash. He orders her to leave at once. Flaffer responds weakly that he doesn't need to worry because in her current state, she doesn't even have the strength to leave the palace. But Jarfel says he'll have a carriage take her as far as the border, adding that there's a chance the other trash from her orphanage is still alive outside the country, and if she wanders long enough, perhaps she'll meet them again. Flaffer desperately pleads for him to wait just a few days and let her stay in the sun. She insists that if he does, surely her power will return. But Jarfel cuts her off, saying it's already been decided. He tells her that aside from her, there are plenty of proper saintesses among the nobility.
Hold up. Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, I'm loving it. I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue.
Then Flaffer realizes those girls who barely have any power at all are replacing her, and she worries they'll be imprisoned like she was. Suddenly, one of the noble saintesses speaks up, declaring that the very idea that a lowly, base saintess like Flaffer and noble, high-born saintesses like them were ever on the same playing field was presumptuous of her. The eye-patched figure orders Flaffer to get in the carriage at once. A noble woman says that from now on, they'll bring the sun's blessings in place of trash like her, tells her to rest assured. The conversation is over, and Flaffer is forced into the carriage. As it begins to depart, the eye-patched figure tells her to listen well to the voices of the people and realize just how useless her existence truly was. The carriage rolls away from the palace with Flaffer sitting inside, broken and defeated. The carriage rolls through the streets carrying Flaffer toward the border, and people line the road, yelling insults as she passes. Someone yells that their taxes were wasted on a woman like her. Another person mocks her, saying she had the nerve to call herself a saint. They see her emaciated form through the carriage window and call her a bag of bones who was supposed to be a saint. The crowd grows more hostile. Someone screams for her to get the hell out of the Kingdom of Harvest. Another yells that she should never come back. Flaffer sits there with tears streaming down her face, finally understanding it was all for nothing. Someone asks Flaffer what's wrong and if she's carsick, noting how pale she looks. Flaffer responds weakly that she thinks she's going to be sick. The person acknowledges this and then suddenly declares they'll put her out of her misery. Flaffer reacts in fear, asking why they would do such a thing. The person tells her she's nothing but a tax thief stealing from the country, and that criminals need to pay for their sins. Flaffer desperately tells them to stop, but the carriage door opens and she's thrown out. The person warns her that if she vomits in there, she should consider her life forfeit. The carriage driver says he'll be taking his leave now and tells Flaffer to try her best to stay alive. Flaffer collapses on the ground as the carriage wheels roll away, lying there in the dirt thinking this is goodbye to her life. As consciousness fades, she wishes for just one more time. The carriage disappears into the distance. She remembers that older brother at the orphanage, realizing all she wanted was to meet someone with a warm heart. Something stirs Flaffer's awareness. She can hear a sound. She makes a weak noise as sensation starts returning to her body. Something is touching her arm. Her vision focuses slightly, and she sees a small slime-like creature near her. Then the creature causes intense pain. Flaffer screams that it hurts, over and over again. Suddenly, the scene shifts to Flaffer lying in a bed with someone standing beside her. A man tells her to calm down and that she should be feeling better in a little while. Flaffer asks who he is exactly, confused and overwhelmed. The man introduces himself as the chief physician serving directly under the royal palace of the Kingdom of Riverside. He explains that His Majesty the King has ordered him to examine her. The physician tells Flaffer that if she can show him such a cute face, she'll be fine. Flaffer looks happy at the kind words. The physician says he'll go report to His Majesty, but tells her to stay in bed a little longer just in case. He leaves the room. Flaffer lies there trying to process everything. She recalls that she was banished from the Harvest Kingdom and was about to die on the roadside when she fainted. She looks around the unfamiliar room, the Riverside Kingdom. Later, Flaffer wakes up in the comfortable bed. She sits up and starts feeling the bedding, amazed at how soft everything is. She says it feels amazing and so fluffy. Then a voice tells her it looks like she's finally awake. Two men stand before her. One of them asks how she's feeling. Flaffer looks up at them and notices how handsome the man is, with his beautiful golden hair. He explains that she was collapsed out in the wasteland and has been sleeping for days, but Flaffer just comments again about how fluffy and amazing the bed feels. The man laughs and clarifies that he's asking about her physical condition. Flaffer realizes her mistake and says the nausea is gone. She feels much better now. She asks who he is and if he's the one who saved her. Suddenly, someone warns her to watch her tongue, noting who this person is. The man introduces himself as His Majesty Forced Riverside, the King of the Riverside Kingdom. Flaffer realizes with shock that she's speaking to the king. Flaffer apologizes for her rudeness and thanks him for saving her. But King Force tells her not to worry about it. He's just a novice king in name only who's always being helped by everyone else. He then asks why she was collapsed in the middle of a barren wasteland like that. Flaffer hesitates, uncertain. She thinks to herself that he doesn't seem like a bad person, but she wonders if it's okay to tell him the truth. Flaffer worries that this might still be the Harvest Kingdom, and there's a possibility he's checking to see if she'll let something slip. King Force tells her that if it's difficult for her to say, she doesn't have to force herself to answer. However, he just wants her to answer one thing. He asks if she thinks she can eat. Flaffer looks completely confused by the question. King Force says of course. Flaffer stammers, asking His Majesty if he means together with someone like her. He tells her it's only natural. Flaffer thanks him sincerely. The scene shifts to show an elaborate feast laid out on the table. Flaffer stares at the massive spread of food and asks if she can really eat all of this. King Force gestures to the massive spread of food and tells Flaffer not to hold back. The table is loaded with dishes that represent several days' worth of meals. Flaffer takes a bite and her eyes light up. She exclaims about never having eaten anything this delicious before. King Force addresses her as Lady Flaffer, asking how she's been eating up until now. Flaffer explains that she had porridge, but it was so hot she couldn't use her hands to eat it. Normally, she would just grab food with her hands and take big bites. Meanwhile, a fork is shown as someone demonstrates the proper way to eat. Flaffer looks up at King Force with emotion in her eyes, asking why someone like His Majesty would be so kind to someone like her. King Force responds that helping those in need is only natural, though he adds that he wouldn't do it for just anyone. Then King Force looks confused, asking what she's talking about. Flaffer sits at the table and thanks him, saying with this meal she should be able to survive for another 3 days. But King Force tells her that they'll prepare breakfast for her tomorrow as well. He asks if she's sure, saying he would like her to rest here in the palace until her strength returns. King Force tells her that in exchange, she'd better get well soon. Flaffer responds with thanks, her voice breaking as she acknowledges his order, a tear forming in her eye. The scene pulls back to show King Force walking away from the table where Flaffer sits alone. The panel ends with an exterior shot of the palace at night. Later, Flaffer lies in the incredibly soft bed, thinking that everything felt like such a dream. She comments on how fluffy and soft the futon is, calling it pure bliss. She reflects on what a kind person His Majesty Forest is as she remembers him standing beside her bed. Lying down to sleep, she thinks to herself that she really needs to master how to use a knife and fork properly since His Majesty went to the trouble of teaching her. In the Kingdom of Harvest, a man calls out to greet Miri. The white-haired girl who looks similar to Flaffer approaches him in a garden and greets him as uncle. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the throne room where one of the noble saintesses is celebrating with King Jarfel. She says it feels wonderful to finally be rid of that useless trash, and unlike that fake from the orphanage, she declares as a duke's daughter she'll demonstrate the true power of a saint for the sake of the country. Then the noble saintess continues speaking to the king. She requests that he raise the saint's compensation. Someone reacts with surprise, but she explains that if the reward goes up, so will the motivation, and she believes they can make the country even more prosperous. The king appears hesitant though. Later, rain begins to fall over the Kingdom of Harvest, and a man observes the rain and notes that wonders never cease. Back in the Kingdom of Riverside, Flaffer stirs awake in her bed. Someone calls to her as Lady Furifur, and a dark-haired maid appears, greeting her good morning. The maid introduces herself as Aqua, explaining she'll be the maid attending to Flaffer's personal needs. Flaffer responds groggily with a sleepy good morning. Aqua asks Flaffer to come with her and leads her straight to the bathhouse, suggesting they start there and get her body nice and clean. Flaffer's completely shocked by the sight of this elaborate bath. Apparently this is her first time in a place like this. Aqua enthusiastically tells her they can clean both her body and clothes together here, then asks her to please give her clothes. Aqua mentions that she is Flaffer's caretaker after all, but Flaffer can't help wondering why she's being so kind to her. Aqua requests that Flaffer not use polite language with her. She wants Flaffer to feel at ease and not worry about formalities. Flaffer says she'll try not to use formal speech then, and Aqua thanks her, confirming she'll try not to be so formal either. So Aqua joins Flaffer in the bath along with other maids to help wash her. After bathing, Flaffer gets dressed in new clothes, admiring them and saying they're such cute clothes. Aqua tells her the outfit suits her perfectly, and Flaffer starts to thank her formally, but catches herself and simply says thanks. Someone tells Flaffer to please spend her time in this room starting from today. Flaffer looks around at the luxurious accommodations, and after being treated so well, she says she wants to repay the people of this country. She wonders if a saint's power recovers even after losing the ability to use it once. Then Flaffer eagerly announces she wants to do farm work, and Aqua agrees enthusiastically. She tells Flaffer there are many things she'd like to point out, but if she wishes, she can use the farm behind the royal palace. Aqua then asks if Flaffer possesses any knowledge of farming, explaining that vegetables won't grow if she just plants the leaves. Aqua decides she supposes connecting with nature is important anyway, and says she'll inform His Majesty. Flaffer recalls how back in the dungeon, delicious vegetables grew just by planting leaves, and now she's wondering if they grow differently depending on the soil. Still, she's pretty excited to get her hands in the dirt. Then rain begins to pour heavily. Flaffer says it's a long shot, but she'll give it a try anyway, praying for the Riverside Kingdom and the sun to get along. Suddenly, someone calls out for Lady Furifur to wake up. It's Aqua urgently telling her to look outside immediately. The rain has stopped. Aqua explains it's actually super rare for the rain to stop in the Riverside Kingdom. Flaffer's wondering if her holy power really is gone, deciding it was probably just a coincidence. Meanwhile, someone asks if Lady Flaffer offers prayers as well. Aqua confirms that His Majesty does it quite often. Flaffer's surprised to hear His Majesty Force does this. Aqua explains that apparently an old benefactor of his used to do it, and she's heard it's also a wish for the betterment of the kingdom. Aqua adds they say it so he doesn't forget that person. Flaffer looks absolutely shocked as she sees the massive farm before them. Aqua comments on how huge it is. Flaffer says the weather's cleared up nicely and declares they should do this, then immediately dives into the dirt and starts working the soil. Aqua watches and thinks about how bold Flaffer is. Now Flaffer's planting leaves directly into the soil of the farm. Aqua watches nervously and points out that she's planting leaves. Flaffer just brushes it off and says it's fine. Aqua smiles and tells her to enjoy herself as she likes, reasoning that even if the plants don't sprout, they'll become nutrients for the soil anyway. She mentions Flaffer has survived this long doing things this way. Finally, Flaffer clasps her hands together and prays at the farm, asking for delicious and nutritious vegetables to grow there. Aqua asks if Flaffer enjoyed herself. Flaffer responds enthusiastically, saying she found some really good soil and thanking Aqua for taking her. Aqua tells her that's good to hear, then suggests they head back to the palace for another bath to get her cleaned up since she got all muddy. Flaffer apologizes for getting so dirty like that. Later that evening in the throne room, Aqua reports to King Forst about what happened at the farm. King Forst tells Aqua to let Flaffer go to the farm whenever she wants. Someone notes that the rain miraculously stopped the moment she wished to go, calling her truly a mysterious girl. The king says he doesn't mind letting her use the farm behind the royal palace as she pleases for a while, adding that they're short-handed anyway due to all the long rain they've had lately. But then Aqua asks if it's because he wishes to keep his favorite, Lady Flaffer, as close to him as possible. She asks if he's falling for her. King Forst quickly denies it. Aqua presses further though, asking if it's not because he's fallen in love. She points out that it must mean something when the king of a nation shows such favor to a single woman. King Forst looks shocked at the accusation. Aqua continues, saying she's well aware of his kindness, but their country is currently suffering from a severe food shortage. She warns that if the people learn he's favoring a foreigner, voices of discontent will rise. King Forst says he understands what she's saying. Then King Forst admits that even he only intended to provide treatment and meals at first. He recalls that while on the way back to the country, when he saw Flaffer's sleeping face, something changed. Aqua suggests that means he's substituting Flaffer as a look-alike for the beloved person he's been searching for all this time, which she calls basically cheating. King Forst insists that's not it. Aqua says it's not love then. King Forst trails off, saying they look so alike though. King Forst explains it's certainly not the case that he wishes to give special treatment only to Lady Flaffer. He says he wishes to repay the debt of gratitude he owes for being raised here, to all his people. He adds that he was not originally of this country, yet he was made its king. His expression becomes emotional as he admits that, however, he couldn't help but think it was fate when he saw her. Aqua responds that precisely what makes it love. King Forst denies it again. King Forst reflects on his decision to save Flaffer, thinking that something was telling him very strongly that she's the one person who absolutely must be saved. Back in the present, Aqua decides to stop pressing the issue for now. She thanks King Forst, acknowledging that the people's trust in him runs deep. She suggests that if he has that sentiment, the people will understand. King Forst apologizes and says he'll cover the expenses. But as Aqua considers the situation, something bothers her about Flaffer's condition. Aqua tells King Forst that she suspects Lady Flaffer may have been abused. King Forst reacts in shock, demanding to know what she just said. Aqua explains that this morning in the grand bath, she noticed bruises on Flaffer's body and asked where she got them. She mentions that this time the injuries were pretty severe and wonders if Flaffer's been suffering injuries like this on a daily basis. Aqua continues, saying she suspects those injuries were inflicted repeatedly over time. King Forst listens silently as she points out the battered state Flaffer was in when they found her. Aqua questions why Flaffer won't try to ask for help, suggesting she's either lost all faith in humanity or is holding back because she thinks she'll be a burden to them. Suddenly, someone rushes in calling for the king. The person tells them it's terrible and to please come immediately. Aqua asks what happened. They arrive at the farm behind the palace to find it completely transformed. The soil where Flaffer planted leaves has produced an abundance of flourishing vegetables and crops. King Forst and Aqua stand there speechless, staring at the miraculous garden before them. Aqua reflects on how incredible this is. Then King Forst calls her name. Aqua responds that in all likelihood, Lady Flaffer is a saint. An image shows Flaffer in glowing saint's clothing, confirming the revelation about her true nature. Later, Flaffer greets King Forst cheerfully, saying good morning to His Majesty. But the thing is, she's talking with her mouth full while eating enthusiastically. King Forst tells her to please swallow before she speaks, though he admits he's glad to see she's recovered so well. Flaffer responds that it's all thanks to him. Then King Forst tells Flaffer he's got a favor to ask of her today. He wants to purchase the vegetables she's grown. Flaffer reacts in complete shock at the proposal. King Forst explains that the rain in the Riverside Kingdom makes it difficult for crops to grow. Until now, they've been importing vegetables at crazy high prices from the neighboring Harvest Kingdom. But here's the thing. Flaffer managed to grow such magnificent vegetables in just a single day. The miraculous garden stands as proof of her abilities. Flaffer explains that she was growing vegetables as a hobby just to survive. She asks if she could really keep doing what she loves, saying that would be amazing. King Forst confirms it. King Forst holds Flaffer's hands and tells her it would be a great help if she stayed at the royal palace forever to continue farming. But then Flaffer responds that she was actually about to ask him the same thing herself. King Forrest asks if she's serious. He then asks if she'll accept gold coins for payment. Flaffer says 1 gold coin is enough payment for the vegetables she grew. She's shocked when she sees how much he's offering. But then Flaffer clarifies that 1 coin includes all the vegetables she's going to grow from now on. King Forrest tells her that's way too cheap no matter how she looks at it. Flaffer insists she really can't accept money for it since farming is just a hobby. She does admit the gold coin is beautiful though, so she'd like to accept just 1 to decorate her room with. King Forrest repeats the word decorate, clearly confused. He asks if it's alright to only give her half the vegetables today, wondering what she'll do with the rest. Flaffer explains she was thinking of tearing off the leaves and replanting them in the soil to grow again. King Forrest listens as she continues, explaining that the leafy parts are good, but planting the core specifically makes them grow back splendidly. Flaffer adds that she thinks the vegetables they received felt good too, and washing them fresh with water and eating them right then is just irresistible. The two of them look at each other, a moment of understanding passing between them. King Forrest reflects with admiration about how much Flaffer truly loves vegetables. Flaffer apologizes for rambling on about such weird things, but King Forrest asks why she's even apologizing. Then King Forrest notices that Flaffer's face is a little red, though Flaffer insists that's just his imagination. King Forrest tells Flaffer that thanks to her, they can start distributing domestic food little by little. And with this, the country might just be saved. He genuinely thanks her for everything. But Flaffer tells King Forrest that he saved her life, and on top of that, he even let her do the farming she loves. She says she's never been this happy before. They hold hands as she speaks. Flaffer continues, saying that even if it's just little by little from now on, she hopes she can repay him someday, her expression showing genuine gratitude and determination. Flaffer excitedly holds up an earthworm, yelling about finding Mr. Earthworm, the castle tower standing tall in the background as she reacts with pure wonder. Aqua immediately freaks out, asking how Lady Furifur can even touch earthworms like that, but Flaffer calmly explains they're harmless, saying these little guys till the soil for them. Later, someone points out a ladybug, while Flaffer nervously promises she'll be careful. Aqua firmly tells her to please stop doing that from now on. Meanwhile, Flaffer is shown kneeling in the garden, praying for the vegetables to grow into healthy ones. She reflects internally that she's supposed to be using her power, but doesn't feel tired at all. Then, in a flashback to her imprisonment, she remembers that before, even a little prayer would drain the strength from her body, making her wonder if it's because her holy power has really disappeared. Back in the present, Aqua notices something seems off and asks if something's the matter. Flaffer admits she actually has a goal in mind, though it's just not going very well. Flaffer thinks about how she can't wait to surprise His Majesty and Aqua with the vegetables, but Aqua comments that Flaffer surprises them every day, referencing just yesterday. A large basket of magnificent vegetables is displayed, the vegetables Lady Flaffer planted that morning apparently ready for harvest by evening. Flaffer reacts in complete shock, asking if they grew that fast, marveling that the Riverside Kingdom sure is a mysterious place. Meanwhile, back inside, Aqua's trying to lecture Flaffer about the gold coins again, asking how many times she has to tell her that gold coins aren't for decoration, but Flaffer insists they're just so pretty though. Then Aqua asks if they weren't supposed to be doing reading and writing lessons today. Flaffer enthusiastically confirms she really wants to learn how to read books. Aqua calls for Lady Flaffer and announces they actually have a special guest instructor there today. Flaffer reacts with confusion. Suddenly, King Forrest enters the room and announces that today he'll teach her how to read and write, saying he's counting on her. Flaffer's completely shocked, asking why His Majesty is even there. Later in the hallway, Flaffer mentions she worked really hard yesterday after all, then asks Aqua to please try eating the vegetable. Aqua takes a bite and reacts with surprise. She realizes these are the vegetables grown by Lord Furifur. She's amazed, saying she's never had vegetables this sweet and flavorful before, and somehow she feels her exhaustion fading away. Meanwhile, King Forrest, sitting in the library, mentions he felt the same way. He concludes that surely the vegetables Lord Furifur grew have restorative properties. King Forrest theorizes that either Flaffer isn't aware of her own power, or perhaps she was treated so poorly that her healing effects couldn't keep up. Aqua considers this and acknowledges it makes sense. Later on, Aqua mentions to King Forrest that Lady Furifur wants to learn how to read and write. King Forrest asks what Flaffer's schedule is for tomorrow and says he'll try speaking to Lady Furifur about it himself. Flaffer tells him it's fine and asks if His Majesty isn't too busy, but King Forrest responds that he'll take care of it. He dramatically declares that when he says he'll finish something, he'll finish it, announcing he's going to finish all of tomorrow's work right now. Later, King Force reveals he's actually already gotten a head start on it, and Flaffer realizes he was already planning this whole thing. King Force says at this rate they should be done pretty soon, then mentions he's feeling great today thanks to all those veggies. Flaffer figures she has no choice but to help out at this point. King Force works energetically through stacks of paperwork while someone comments that he's a total lifesaver. Meanwhile, Flaffer hums happily as she walks through the halls. King Force tells her they should get started right away, and Flaffer agrees. The two sit close together at a table, and Flaffer realizes they're sitting really close. Her heart starts pounding fast. But then she catches herself and thinks this isn't the time to get carried away, reminding herself that since he's taking the time to teach her, she has to take this seriously. King Force shows her a paper and asks her to take a look at it. He explains it's an alphabet chart and mentions that he used this exact thing to learn how to read and write at first too. Then King Force starts quizzing her on the letters, pointing out different characters while Flaffer identifies them correctly, and she seems to be getting the gist of it already. Flaffer says she thinks she's memorized the basics, noting that His Majesty's teaching style is very easy to understand. But King Force tells her there's no need to rush since she's only read through it once. King Force suggests how about a little quiz then. He tests her on various letters, and Flaffer answers each one correctly. King Force is stunned, telling her she got every question right, and Flaffer thanks him enthusiastically, while King Force admits he can't believe it. Flaffer praises King Force, telling him that he's only read it once, and that's amazing. Since he's taking the trouble to teach her, she adds that besides that, there's something else. King Force mentions he has to memorize it in one go. Then Flaffer asks if there's a punishment involved if she doesn't. She continues, asking if it's true that if she doesn't memorize every word of royalty correctly, she'll be punished. King Force looks confused and asks her to repeat that. King Force then asks Flaffer if that's how she's been treated over and over. He asks if she's been hurt all this time. Suddenly, Flaffer realizes something might be off and wonders if she said something weird. She exclaims, asking if getting punished isn't normal. Flaffer quickly tries to smooth things over, clarifying that when she says punishment, she means maybe getting a little less food or something like that. King Force takes in her explanation carefully, then asks who on earth did such terrible things to her. Flaffer hesitates. She actually wants to tell him, but she's worried that if relations between their countries worsen because of her, it would cause all kinds of problems. But King Force tells her that if she doesn't want to say it, she doesn't have to, and besides, it doesn't matter if she can't do everything on the first try or if she makes mistakes. Flaffer is totally taken aback by his understanding response. King Force explains that everyone makes mistakes and it's perfectly natural. Even he messes up sometimes, but the difference is he's never been harshly blamed for them every time it happens. Flaffer absorbs his words, asking if that's really true. King Force firmly declares he would never scold her just for making a mistake or two. Suddenly, tears start streaming down Flaffer's face from the overwhelming kindness. King Force comforts her, acknowledging that she's been through so much. Flaffer admits between her tears that it was really painful. Then she realizes that she's finally being freed from all that suffering. An image of her behind prison bars appears as King Force's words echo in her mind, reminding her that she doesn't have to be afraid in that dungeon anymore. Flaffer reflects on how this person actually saved her. Later on, someone announces that since today is a special occasion, they should dress up as much as they can. Flaffer looks at herself wearing fancy clothing and asks if it looks weird. She wonders if it's really okay for her to wear something like this, but the person with her reassures Flaffer that it suits her perfectly. Flaffer stands in the palace corridor dressed in an elegant gown decorated with flowers, announcing that she's heading out. Someone calls after her, addressing her as Lord Furifur. She wonders what this special talk from His Majesty could be about as she walks toward the throne room. Once she arrives in the throne room, King Force tells Flaffer he simply had to find a way to thank her, and he seems even more kingly than usual today. Flaffer asks what he means by a reward, and King Force explains that when they distributed the vegetables from the farm he entrusted to her, everyone who ate them regained their vigor instantly. Turns out the vegetables she grew apparently possessed some kind of special power. Flaffer admits she was just having fun playing with the soil and veggies, but King Force announces that he wishes to formally commend her for this in the throne room anyway. King Force thanks her for saving his people and tells her he'll do his utmost for the kingdom. Flaffer nervously responds that she'll do her best, and King Force says he looks forward to her future endeavors. but besides the monetary reward, he bestows something else upon her, a royal medal that has her name engraved on it. The medal serves as identification and allows her to use various facilities for free. King Forrest adds that the state-run hot springs are completely free too. Flaffer gets excited, noting that they have a different charm compared to the grand baths in the royal palace. Aqua observes that they're heading straight for the hot springs then, and Flaffer eagerly confirms she can't wait. Outside, Aqua warns Flaffer not to shout and frolic about like those bathtub dives she always does at the palace. Flaffer says she'll be careful and invites Aqua to get in the bath with them too. Someone suggests they board the carriage, but then Flaffer spots the horse pulling it and greets the animal enthusiastically. She gets close to pet it, but someone warns her about getting too close. The horse nuzzles Flaffer and she laughs, saying it tickles. Meanwhile, Aqua watches with this uncomfortable expression on her face. Flaffer asks Aqua why she's making that face, and Aqua scolds her for being so reckless. She admits she didn't expect Flaffer to have the qualities to be liked by animals. Flaffer explains that the horse looked like it wanted to be petted before working. Aqua asks if she can really tell something like that, and Flaffer says it's just a feeling. Later in the carriage, Flaffer hums happily to herself. Flaffer stands outside the public bathhouse looking at the sparse crowd. She notes there were fewer people than she expected, saying she heard that all the common folk bathe in public bathhouses. Aqua asks what she means by that, then suggests maybe everyone just doesn't like baths after all. Flaffer had thought there would be tons of people, and it would be really lively. Aqua mentions it's been a while since she came here too, but there certainly were very few people. She figures they likely just can't afford it, but Flaffer doesn't think that's the case. The explanation comes together as they discuss the situation. Originally, the Riverside Kingdom was a country where it rained all year round, and especially with the torrential rains continuing this year, the citizens are working non-stop, so even if they wanted to refresh themselves with a bath, they simply can't. Flaffer takes this in and wonders what they can do to make things easier. Aqua points out that right now they're delivering the vegetables Flaffer grew to the people, but the royal farm alone isn't enough to reach every civilian. Flaffer supposes having plenty of food would be the answer. Aqua asks if Lady Furifur is planning to help out for free again. Flaffer says that maybe starting tomorrow, she'll help out at farms outside the royal palace too. Aqua gets animated, explaining that Flaffer's lack of greed is wonderful, but she really should accept some compensation. She points out it doesn't do the other party any favors either. Aqua describes potential problems, like when they tried to pay out of goodwill, but Flaffer wouldn't accept it, or trouble arising when people complain about inconsistent pricing. Aqua tells her she'll manage the matter of Flaffer's remuneration, and Flaffer agrees, saying she'll leave it to her then. The scene shifts to the Kingdom of Harvest where rain pours down on the palace. Someone asks Miri when the sun will show its face again. Miri complains that she's praying earnestly every single day, blaming the other saints for not doing their jobs properly. Someone responds in agreement, noting that now the palace vegetables are wilting because of all this rain, and it's quite troublesome. Down in what appears to be a dungeon or basement area, King Jarfel is working to dispose of soil. He mutters that even though the palace has finally been cleaned up, he's relieved he finally managed to dispose of that dungeon soil harboring that detestable woman's power. King Jarfel admits he agrees about the situation. Ever since he hasn't been able to eat those vegetables, he hasn't felt very energetic either. Miri says she's in terrible shape without those vitality-boosting vegetables, and King Jarfel responds that she's right. Then Miri asks what the point would be of making it sunny only over the royal palace. King Jarfel explains that she could activate her holy power only within the royal palace for a while, without the citizens finding out. Miri points out that might be illegal, but King Jarfel just brushes this off, saying it's not a problem. He argues that those in the highest offices of the land must always be in high spirits. If Miri and he feeling good invigorates the nation, surely no one would complain. Miri sees his point and agrees that's very true, telling him he's brilliant as always while addressing him as uncle. The scene dramatically shows the wilted vegetables in the Harvest Kingdom Palace that desperately need attention. Meanwhile, Flaffer and Aqua decided to tour the farms of the Riverside Kingdom, starting with the one closest to the palace. They arrive at a nearby farm where an older woman with curly hair greets them warmly. The farmer is delighted to see such adorable children visiting her. Flaffer introduces herself, explaining that her name is Furifur and that she grows vegetables at the royal palace. The farmer introduces herself as Marasha, and Aqua formally introduces herself as the maid assigned to Lady Furifur. Marasha recognizes Flaffer as the kid who grew those remarkable vegetables for the royal palace. She studies Flaffer with an impressed expression, then tells her she possesses an extraordinary power unlike anything Marasha has ever seen before. Flaffer looks up at her with wide, sparkling eyes. Then Flaffer asks if Marasha could take a look at one of the fields, and the group eagerly agrees. Marasha tells Flaffer not to be so nervous and to just act natural. Flaffer says she'll go ahead and do it then, but immediately trips and faceplants into the muddy field. Flaffer kneels down in the damaged field and begins praying with her eyes closed, surrounded by this gentle glow. She asks for the soil to become a place where bugs can live happily, and prays that delicious and nutritious vegetables will grow here at the farm. After she finishes her work, Marasha calls out to her from nearby, telling her good work today and inviting her to come over and have a seat. The group sits down for tea together. Flaffer asks what Marasha meant by power. Marasha says she's satisfied having seen power far beyond her imagination. She tells Flaffer directly that she possesses tremendous power as a saint, adding that Flaffer really ought to be more aware of it herself, just as Aqua had told her. Flaffer looks shocked and asks how Marasha knows that she's a saint. Marasha smiles warmly, wondering if it could be what she thinks. She explains that her own powers have already faded and that it's ancient history now. Then Flaffer realizes with surprise that Marasha herself is a saint. Suddenly, Aqua apologizes to Flaffer, saying she's sorry for everything until now. Aqua reveals that both she and King Forst realized Flaffer was a saint. She explains that since it seemed Flaffer was hiding her identity, Aqua was worried about how to break the news. She goes on to explain that she consulted Lady Marasha, the former saint, about the matter. Marasha said if she had the chance to meet Flaffer directly, she could offer advice as a predecessor. Flaffer admits she was a saint before, but now she thinks she's just a fake one. She says she didn't feel like she was using any power at all. But Marasha tells Flaffer she seems truly unaware. She assures Flaffer that she is a genuine, magnificent saint and tells her to take a look behind her. Flaffer turns around and sees the field she just blessed, completely transformed with sprouting plants everywhere. She can't believe what she's seeing. Her body doesn't feel tired at all despite performing what should have been exhausting work. Marasha explains that being able to use that much power without even feeling tired means Flaffer's strength is off the charts. Like to begin with, being blessed by not just the weather, but nature itself is basically unheard of. She adds that if she had used this much power back in her prime, she would have collapsed from exhaustion immediately, but for Flaffer, this level of exertion is probably just like going for a walk in the park. Flaffer asks why she has so much power when back in the Harvest Kingdom she didn't feel this strong. Marasha explains that as long as Flaffer gets proper nutrition and lives a healthy life, both her body and her holy powers will return to their peak condition. But then Flaffer becomes worried, realizing that if word gets out to others that she's still a saint, they'll tell her to work around the clock and she won't be able to play in the mud freely anymore. Meanwhile, Aqua fully understands just how incredible Flaffer's power is and thinks it defies common sense. Aqua asks what the matter is since Flaffer has such a troubled look on her face. Flaffer says she just really wants to keep playing in the mud even if people know she's a saint. Marasha asks why she doesn't just do it then. Aqua tells Flaffer that if she would use that power for the Riverside Kingdom, she believes it will become a peaceful and prosperous nation. But there's no need for Flaffer to stop doing what she loves for that sake. She's free to live as carefree as she wishes. Aqua assures Flaffer that if anyone appears who demands she use her power to its limit or tries to force her into doing something terrible, neither His Majesty nor Aqua will stay silent. Seeing as the Saintess is a national treasure, it would be absurd to treat her carelessly. Marasha smiles warmly at this exchange. Later that evening at the Riverside Kingdom Palace, King Forst, Flaffer, and Aqua share dinner together under the moonlit sky. During the meal, Aqua apologizes to Flaffer for keeping quiet about realizing she was the saint. Flaffer asks why she didn't just ask directly. King Forst explains he thought if he asked, Flaffer would put her guard up and wouldn't be able to relax. King Forst tells Flaffer that now they've confirmed the power belongs to her, he'd like to increase her reward. Flaffer looks at the gold coins with this somewhat disappointed expression on her face. King Forst says of course there are the gold coins, but this time he'd like to grant her one special wish. Flaffer perks up at the mention of a wish, asking if he means like a prize. She admits that just being able to play on the farm is already like a reward in itself. Then Flaffer asks if King Forst would give her 1 day of his time. King Forst looks surprised and asks if it's for her. Flaffer thinks to herself that she just came up with something, a reward that both she and King Forst can enjoy together. Meanwhile, Aqua comments on how wonderful it is, while Flaffer internally celebrates getting a reward. Flaffer excitedly agrees to do it. Thanking King Forest for the opportunity, she looks completely healthy now, her body fully recovered and her tattered clothes replaced with proper attire. Later, King Forest walks down the palace hallway, reflecting on how innocent and adorable she is, though perhaps a bit too innocent for her age. He reflects on how unlike everyone else who approached him seeking ambition or honor, Flaffer's request to the king was simply to play in the mud. He wonders what on earth she could be thinking and realizes he wants to know more about her. The next day at a large bathhouse, King Force questions whether a bathhouse was really the right choice. He reminds Flaffer that he did say he'd accompany her wherever she went. Flaffer explains that she asked Aqua to reserve the whole place just for them today. King Force seems somewhat resigned to this arrangement. Flaffer eagerly tells him to hurry and get in the bath. King Force is taken aback, asking if she means him too. At the bathhouse, Flaffer suddenly realizes something and asks if this is the women's bath. King Force looks completely shocked, asking if she's seriously planning on bathing with him. Then Flaffer starts cheerfully undressing, explaining they got the whole place to themselves today. King Forest is absolutely stunned. He asks if she's trying to seduce him, demanding to know why she's giving her clothes without any shame whatsoever. Flaffer panics and tells him to wait, but King Forest insists that's not an appropriate way to show gratitude. Flaffer explains it's just a token of her appreciation. Thanks to him, she's been enjoying every single day. Suddenly, Aqua bursts in and yells at Flaffer, asking what in the world she's doing. Aqua asks if Flaffer isn't embarrassed to be seen not good, but Flaffer casually responds that clothes are just for keeping out the cold. Aqua urges King Force to come away while he warns Flaffer to look out as she nearly slips. In the chaos, King Force and Flaffer's faces end up extremely close together in this super awkward moment. Afterward, King Force walks alone through the palace hallway in complete silence. Later, Flaffer apologizes to King Forest. He tells her there's one thing she needs to remember. While she doesn't need to worry around Aqua, she should never show her underwear or personality to a man, saying that's simply how the world works. Flaffer nervously says she understands, but King Force thinks to himself that she doesn't understand at all. Despite the whole lecture, Flaffer tells him she really wants him to join her for a bath today. Inside the bathhouse, Flaffer enjoys having Aqua wash her hair, thinking it feels absolutely amazing. She suddenly gets this vague feeling that someone washed her hair like this a long time ago. Aqua asks if something's wrong, and Flaffer confirms it definitely feels good. Aqua presses her, but Flaffer says it's nothing. Meanwhile, King Forest soaks in a separate part of the bath, wondering when the last time was that he actually relaxed in a bath like this. King Forest tells Flaffer he's glad about something, and Flaffer happily points out how relaxed he looks now. King Forest suggests that maybe it's thanks to her, thanking her for whatever she's done. Flaffer, being modest about it, says she wouldn't really say that. Then King Forest asks if they should get out soon, but also wonders if they can stay just a little longer. His words make Flaffer blush pretty hard. Meanwhile, still in the bathhouse, Aqua calls out to Flaffer. The scene pulls back to show both Flaffer and King Forest just relaxing together in the bath from a distance. Eventually, though, the happy bath time comes to an end. Later that evening, King Forest sits in Flaffer's room, watching over her as she sleeps. He notices an old bruise on her body and his expression grows somber. The guy's clearly thinking about how much pain she must have been through, how much she must have endured. The bruise clearly isn't recent either, suggesting there's a whole history of suffering there. Someone reflects that Lady Flaffer is a strong girl. In the present moment, Flaffer makes these pained sounds and struggles in her sleep. King Force realizes he's in way over his head and gives up trying to handle this alone. He decides he's got no choice but to ask Aqua to come help. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Kingdom of Harvest at night. In Duke Balmel's residence, he tells his niece Miri that he's got a favor to ask of her. Miri asks what it is. Duke Balmel, who happens to be King Jarbel's younger brother, tells Miri he wants her to go to the neighboring kingdom of Riverside for a while since they currently lack a saintess. Miri's shocked and asks why she has to go to a place like that. The Duke reminds her that she possesses holy power and tells her to go show off that power in the wretched environment of the kingdom of Riverside. But Miri protests, saying even if that country wanted her, she'd hate living in a foreign land. She asks what good showing off would even do. She suggests having another saintess go to the kingdom of Riverside instead. The Duke explains that what they're actually seeking is rain for their drought-stricken land, so there's no need for her to go personally. The Duke's wife keeps breaking down the plan. She tells Miri that not only will they put other nations in their debt, but if they eliminate the extra saints and Miri becomes the only saint supporting the Kingdom of Harvest, it'll be a massive win for the ducal house. Miri asks if the country's gonna be alright while she's gone. The woman responds that the burden's way too heavy for the other saints to handle alone. She mentions that her brother said the vegetables he grew seemed to have fatigue recovery effects, so it should be fine. He mentioned he'd feed them to the saints. Miri thinks about her uncle's vegetables. It's true that the vegetables her uncle grew as a hobby always made her feel energetic when she ate them. But here's the thing. The ones harvested this time were just ordinary vegetables, nothing special like before. The scene shows her uncle standing all proud in his garden. Miri thinks to herself that there's no way those girls can handle the duties of a saintess on their own. A close-up shows someone's gloved hand near a dagger. Miri's expression turns calculating as she realizes this might just be a chance for her as well. Meanwhile, someone addresses Lady Miri as her carriage convoy travels through the mountain roads. They inform her that they'll arrive at the Riverside Kingdom shortly. Miri looks out from inside the carriage and notes that it was farther than she expected. The scene shifts to show a grand palace building as Miri confirms her understanding and states she'll head to the Riverside Kingdom. Someone tells Miri they got high expectations for her and instructs her to go show them the power of a saint. The narration reveals that for now, Miri's gonna go along with her father's plan and head to the Riverside Kingdom. Inside an ornate room, someone addresses her as Lady Saint as she's being prepared. Miri thinks to herself that if the weather turns rough in her absence, everyone will realize just how vital the existence of a saint, and by extension herself, is to this country. She imagines herself being revered by the people as the kingdom's most precious saint. Then Miri thinks maybe she should demonstrate her power in the Riverside Kingdom too and receive a passionate welcome while she's at it. But she pauses, realizing that Fear's gotta be in the Riverside Kingdom as well. She considers that if everyone thinks the saints of the Harvest Kingdom are all incompetent like her, it could be a problem. In another scene, someone explains that according to the driver, he dumped Fear in the wasteland during the disposal process, so she's likely not alive anymore. Another person responds with mild surprise. The first person adds that dying like a dog on the side of the road does seem a little pitiable. As they arrive at the Riverside Kingdom, someone mentions they heard the kingdom had terrible weather because they lacked a saint, but now they're wondering why it's so sunny. They find it strange and suggest asking around at the capital checkpoint. Inside the carriage, Mira mentions that since the weather is so nice, she'd love to go tour the farms right away. She recalls that the last time she was here, the long rains had turned the farms into straight-up lakes. Her companion responds that it sounds interesting and they'd love to go see that. Meanwhile, Miri thinks to herself that she'll see just how poor this country she's going to save really is. At the capital, guards comment that it's been sunny for days lately. One of them mentions this is the first time in his life he's been able to work in such refreshing, cheerful weather. Inside the carriage, Miri reacts with restrained acknowledgement. Someone reassures her that there's no need to worry, it's just a miraculous streak of good weather right now. A guard tells someone to watch their step. Then Mira's companion suggests that if she stays a while, the weather will surely turn suspicious. They agree and propose touring the farm, noting that they'll surely see damp soil where vegetables can barely grow. But when Miri arrives at a farm, she's shocked to see it bursting with healthy vegetables. She thinks it's impossible that such healthy vegetables could grow in a land where it does nothing but rain. She tries to rationalize it by assuming they're surely just using high-grade fertilizer here, since other farms wouldn't turn out like this. She decides to move on to the next farm. At another farm, though, Miri spots more thriving vegetables and reacts in disbelief. She looks at the dry, cracked farmland and realizes she can't demonstrate her powers like this. Suddenly, someone calls out to Lady Miri. She decides to go ask about this situation. The farmer tells Miri there's no saintess in this country anymore. Miri asks about a saintess. The farmer clarifies it's not the saintess, but rather they borrowed the power of the person growing vegetables in the royal palace. Miri processes this and realizes there really is no saintess in the Riverside Kingdom. She asks who this person is. The farmer recalls it was a cute girl, and seeing her happily working on the soil made him feel happy too. He wonders where that girl is now. The farmer offers Miri a tomato, saying fate must have brought her here. Miri eagerly accepts and bites into it. Immediately, she's shocked by the taste. The flavor is incredibly juicy and sweet, bursting with deliciousness that completely blows away the fatigue of her journey. She feels as if a spell of happiness has been cast upon the tomato. The farmer asks if it's tasty, and Miri declares these are tastier than any vegetable she's ever eaten. She can't believe someone who grows vegetables this delicious actually exists. She insists this person must come to the Harvest Kingdom, then commands her group to immediately tour every farm in the capital. Miri's companion agrees it's a wonderful discovery. Miri says her father and uncle will be delighted to hear this news. Someone asks what's gotten into her all of a sudden, but Miri orders the carriage to stop if they see a girl near any farm. Someone reluctantly agrees. Soon after, the companion spots a girl over there. Miri looks out and recognizes Fraffer. She questions whether those vegetables from earlier were also Fraffer's doing, though she doubts it. She observes that Fraffer looks like a completely different person from when she was in the Harvest Kingdom. Mira panics, wondering if Fraffer walked through the wasteland, and what it means that she's now in the Riverside Kingdom. Meanwhile, someone calls out to Lady Furifur that it's almost time for her meal. Flaffer is outside stretching and making satisfied sounds after what seems to be a pleasant nap. Mira watches from a distance, thinking Flaffer must be going through a lot in her daily life to enjoy a nap so much. Flaffer happily declares that was so much fun. Later, Aqua scolds Flaffer for having mud even inside her mouth and tells her to rinse it out with some water. Then Flaffer notices a spot somewhere. Meanwhile, one of the noble saintesses from Harvest Kingdom questions why a useless woman like Flaffer is living with a smile on her face. Another saintess points out that Flaffer is even weaker than she is, yet she's the only one having fun. The first saintess complains about how hard they work to fulfill their duties as saints. The saintesses dismiss Flaffer's situation, saying she was probably just picked up by some merchant and forced to work anyway. They observe Flaffer energetically working around, noting she just happens to have the day off to play around. One saintess comments that this country has so little entertainment to offer. From the carriage, someone announces they're moving on to the next farm. Miri laments that they couldn't find the girl who was rumored to be a master vegetable grower in the end. She notes the clear weather and figures there must be a powerful saintess the public doesn't know about. Disappointed she won't be able to show off her own power. Her escort observes that despite her words, Miri seems to be in a good mood. Miri explains they were able to buy so many vegetables. At the market, they purchase various produce. Someone asks if they should return to the Harvest Kingdom then, and Miri agrees enthusiastically. She says they've obtained valuable information, so she's certain her father will be pleased. The carriage departs. Meanwhile, back at the Riverside Kingdom Palace, an official reports to King Forst that the spy they sent to the Harvest Kingdom has returned. The official states the treatment Lady Furifur received was beyond imagination, and King Forst responds that this is just as he suspected. King Forst's expression hardens as he hears that the Harvest Kingdom's weather was only maintained thanks to Lady Furifur, yet they called her disposal and cast her out into the wasteland. Then the female advisor reminds King Forst that he was also exiled from the Harvest Kingdom in the same way. King Forst acknowledges that in his case, he survived thanks to the aid of this country, but Lady Furifur was alone for a long time. The advisor tells him it's thanks to his intuition and judgment that Lady Furifur was saved. Without that, she would have died. King Forst reflects on how mysterious it is, recalling that even when he was exiled from the Harvest Kingdom, he followed his intuition to find food and water along the path and managed to reach this country on his own. He calls it a miracle. The advisor praises King Forst's excellent intuition, but then points out it didn't seem to be working at all in the Grand Bathhouse the other day. She questions whether that was intentional. The advisor firmly declares it wasn't. She admits she was worried he might let his anger take over and sanction the Harvest Kingdom right then and there. King Forst reassures her he wouldn't go that far, and the advisor says she's relieved to hear his usual retort. Then the advisor's expression turns serious as she warns that if word of Flaffer's power gets out, there will surely be those who try to take her back. She suggests it would be best to keep Flaffer under constant surveillance and that they should assign guards to Lady Furifur as well. The female advisor then suggests to King Forst that if he saved Lady Furifur, that would solve everything. She teases him, pointing out he's the spineless majesty who couldn't even make a move on her when she was not good. King Forst protests that she shouldn't tease him like that. Meanwhile, in another scene, Flaffer is outside in the garden being watched by various palace staff while the advisor speaks with King Forst in the hallway. The advisor says she's joking, but regardless, she'll increase the surveillance and guard detail on Flaffer. Later, someone asks Lady Furifur if she has a moment. During a meal with King Forst and the advisor mentions she's heard it's been raining non-stop in the Kingdom of Harvest lately. Flaffer asks what about it, like why does that matter? The advisor notes that country is supposed to have 3 saints, then asks if Flaffer has been praying for the weather in the Kingdom of Harvest up until now. Flaffer confirms she has. The advisor then asks if Flaffer was properly compensated for it, assuming her holy power was what actually saved the Kingdom of Harvest. Flaffer asks why they're even asking such a thing. King Forst explains there are some pretty bad rumors circulating about the Harvest Kingdom, and depending on whether they're true or not, he intends to cut off relations with them. That's why he thought he first asked for the opinion of Lady Furifur, who used to live there. Flaffer asks if he'll swear that no matter what happens, he won't go storming in there. King Force says he certainly wouldn't do anything as foolish as starting a fight himself, though of course he'd defend the country if they were invaded. The advisor says she understands. King Force swears that no matter what he hears, he won't execute anyone from the Harvest Kingdom, and the advisor adds that if anything happens, she'll stop it. Flaffer explains that in that case, her reward was 1 meal a day consisting of bread or leftovers, and she occasionally received worn-out clothes. Both King Force and the advisor react with shock. Then Flaffer continues, saying that's why she thought the rewards in this country were amazing. She was truly happy to receive such beautiful ornaments that looked like gold coins. Someone asks her to wait a minute and questions where exactly Lady Furifur was living. Flaffer explains that after being taken to the royal palace, she was kept in the dungeon. Suddenly, the palace erupts with shocked sounds. Flaffer recounts that His Majesty King Jalbar ordered her to stay in the dungeon and continuously release her holy power. She had nowhere else to go, so she had no choice but to obey. She was told they would protect the country using only saints of noble birth, not an orphan like her, and so she was disposed of. But then, while being transported in a carriage, she started feeling sick and was abandoned on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. When she woke up, she had been saved and was already in this country. King Force says it's beyond his imagination. The advisor agrees, saying yeah, to think it would go this far. King Force declares this is absolutely unforgivable. No matter what happens, they have no obligation to save them. He's severing diplomatic ties with the Kingdom of Harvest right then and there. The advisor notes that either way, that country won't last much longer if left to its own devices. King Force then assures Lady Furifur that he won't plot any assassinations or revenge. He'll keep his promise. Meanwhile, someone explains that apparently it's been raining continuously in the Harvest Kingdom now, just like it used to in the Riverside Kingdom. The reason the Riverside Kingdom survived the continuous rain was because they racked their brains and constantly took countermeasures. But the Harvest Kingdom is different. If the rain continues there, the very survival of the nation will be in doubt. King Force speculates that the environment must have changed drastically due to Lady Furifur's absence. He believes the original environment must be so harsh that the saintess over there can't handle it with her power alone. Someone points out that country has 3 saintesses though. Then King Force tells Flaffer that they'll eventually realize just how important her power was. When that happens, he's worried they might try to abduct her. That's when Flaffer realizes why there are so many guards watching over her. King Force apologizes for making Flaffer recall such a painful past, but Flaffer just smiles and tells him she's actually happy that he cares about her this much. King Force declares that of course he cares about her. Then he explains that when he thought the days of them eating together and talking like this might be lost forever, his heart felt like it was going to burst. He admits he raised his voice without thinking and apologizes for that. Flaffer addresses him as Your Majesty, clearly touched that he wasn't talking about her holy power, but rather the actual days they spend together. Then King Force asks Lady Furifur one more thing. He wants to know if she was in an orphanage. Flaffer confirms she was, though it was only during her childhood. She explains she was taken from the orphanage by the king at the time, and at first, the treatment was actually better than the orphanage, but it gradually got worse. Eventually, she ended up living in the royal palace dungeon. Flaffer adds that she heard the other children from the orphanage were all disposed of. She was even one of the lucky ones. Then Flaffer continues, explaining how one of the children from the orphanage really cherished her. He was incredibly sharp, just like King Force, and she thinks maybe he's still alive somewhere. Suddenly, Flaffer reacts with surprise. He's alive. She knew it, surely somewhere in this country. But King Force tells her that he is in this country. Flaffer asks if she could really meet him if possible. Flaffer becomes visibly emotional at the prospect. Meanwhile, King Force apologizes for not noticing until now, then tells Flaffer that Big Brother is right here, indicating himself. Flaffer's eyes widen in complete shock at the revelation. Then Flaffer reflects on her orphanage days, admitting there are things she remembers, however slight. She was so small back then that most of it is hazy, but she does remember the Big Brother she loved so much. A memory surfaces of young Flaffer as a child, hiding behind flowers at the orphanage, getting emotional about those distant days. In the flashback, the young boy finds little Flaffer lying in the mud and calls out to her as his little sister, saying so this is where she was. Young Flaffer perks up and calls him Big Brother. The boy looks at her with gentle exasperation, commenting that she really does love playing in the mud. Flaffer responds happily that when she plays in the mud, It just makes her feel so energized. Flaffer narrates more about the orphanage. None of the children living there had names, and the adults just called them by numbers. But there was one person who was different. An older boy called her his little sister and doted on her. He wasn't her real brother, but she started calling him Big Brother too. The memory shows them walking together in the orphanage courtyard. The boy helps young Flaffer wash off all the mud in a wooden tub outdoors, telling her she has to wash all the mud off properly or she'll get scolded again. Flaffer responds that the bubbles feel so good, then playfully says she'll get him all bubbly too. The boy tries to decline, saying he's fine really, but Flaffer is already splashing bubbles at him. Flaffer narrates that life at the orphanage was harsh, but the time she spent with him was so much fun. Then the happy memory fades to a darker scene. At night in the dormitory, the young boy wakes up on the floor looking distressed. He notices young Flaffer standing nearby and asks what's wrong. Young Flaffer is crying, covering her face as she tells him she had a scary dream. The boy tells her to come here, saying that must have been scary. Flaffer explains through tears that she was trapped in a dark place and a bad person was yelling at her. The boy holds her comfortingly and reassures her that he's right here with her, so it's okay. In the flashback memory, young Flaffer lies in bed saying tomorrow too, with her big brother, she hopes they can have lots of fun together. The young boy smiles and tells her he likes that one. Young Flaffer happily responds that she'll copy him too. They hold hands together as the boy says he hopes he can spend forever with his little sister. The memory fades away, showing the two children holding hands in that innocent moment. Meanwhile, back in the present at the Riverside Palace, Aqua stands there watching as King Forrest holds Flaffer. Flaffer asks if it's really him, her big brother. King Forrest confirms that it's right. Then King Forrest tells Flaffer that back then it didn't have names, but they called each other by special names. Flaffer responds that he's right. King Forrest continues, saying she was the only one who would call him her brother. Flaffer's emotions overwhelm her as she realizes she wasn't mistaken, and King Forrest embraces her tightly, telling her he's wanted to see her for so long. Aqua watches them and says she's truly glad they could reunite. King Forrest mentions that even though they've been meeting this whole time, Lady Flaffer was the person His Majesty was searching for. Aqua tells them she'll step out for a while and they should feel free to do as they please. But King Forrest tries to stop her, saying not to make things awkward. Later, King Forrest asks Flaffer how she survived. He explains that from what he heard, everyone was abandoned outside the royal capital. King Forrest describes how they followed their intuition and miraculously found food and water along the way, managing to keep going despite it being a grueling journey. They walked for dozens of days and finally made it to the Riverside Kingdom. He tells Flaffer that everyone from the orphanage is living in the Riverside Kingdom now. Flaffer responds quietly, relieved to hear that news. The panel shows a dramatic view of the thriving kingdom below. The scene shifts to the Kingdom of Harvest where heavy rain's just pouring down over the capital. People are panicking all over the place, questioning how much longer this rain's gonna last and what the saints even doing about it. They're terrified the country's gonna collapse at this rate. Meanwhile, inside the palace, King Jarfel confronts Balmer, demanding to know why the hell he let Mira go on a trip in the first place. Balmer responds that there are other saints around, so he figured it'd be fine for a little while. He adds that she should be returning any moment now anyway. But Duke Balmer's standing there thinking about his whole plan. The scheme was to send the other saintesses to neighboring countries after they saw Mira's power. That way Mira would become the sole saint of the Harvest Kingdom and raise the Duke's reputation through the roof. He totally expected the other saints to be unable to fill the void left by Mira's absence. Back in the palace, King Jarfel's complaining that it's been nothing but rain specifically because Miri isn't there. Balmer tries to defend himself, saying Miri's currently using her powers not just in their country, but in the Riverside Kingdom as well. King Jarfel cuts him off and says the blame's naturally gonna fall on him as the king. Then King Jarfel tells Balmer to look at the situation. First, they need to get the sun to shine in the Harvest Kingdom again. If Balmer continues to act on his own like this, the king's got his own plans in mind. A guard enters with a report, and King Jarfel turns around to ask what it is. Magical sparkles suddenly appear in the air. Balmer asks what's going on, but King Jarfel just dismisses him, saying something urgent has come up, and they'll discuss this later. Balmer protests, but the king tells him there's no need for him to know. Balmer reminds the king that he's the prime minister after all, but King Jarfel just walks away and tells him again that it doesn't concern him. Balmer stands there fuming, cursing his brother for leaving without even stating his business. He wonders who the selfish one is now, and if the king makes a fool of him any further, Balmer will show no mercy and drag him down from that throne. Meanwhile, at a checkpoint outside the capital, Miri is being stopped by guards. She's furious, declaring that she's a duke's daughter and the saint. It's unthinkable that she can't pass through a checkpoint. The guard apologizes but says these are the king's direct orders. Miri complains about how she's been offering prayers across the entire royal capital for the first time in ages. Then King Jarfel appears in a carriage window and asks for a word with her. Miri turns in surprise, calling him uncle. King Jarfel says he heard from Balmer that she went to the Riverside Kingdom. Miri nervously confirms that's right. She explains she hasn't been feeling well lately, so she figured she'd do it for a change of pace. King Jarfel demands that she use her holy power to stop the rain immediately or he's in trouble. Because she wasn't there, the rain kept falling and his reputation among the citizens has plummeted. Miri responds that she's already praying and the rain should stop in just a little while. As punishment for leaving the country without permission, King Jarfel cancels the matter of her pay increase. Miri protests that it's too cruel. Then she offers that she has all sorts of information on the Riverside Kingdom. King Jarfel considers it and says depending on the content, he may give her a future raise. The weather clears up dramatically. King Jarfel observes that the good weather has been holding up, and it's no longer a country where it does nothing but rain. Miri tells him she suspects the Riverside Kingdom has a powerful saint on their hands. King Jarfel asks what else she's got. Then Miri adds enthusiastically that there were vegetables there that were unbelievably delicious. But King Jarfel just dismisses Miri's claim, saying that simply cannot be true. Miri insists though, explaining that up until now, the Riverside Kingdom has been paying massive sums of money to import food from the Harvest Kingdom. She goes on to say that it didn't feel like there was a food shortage at all in Riverside. Though she doesn't know all the details, their agriculture was thriving. King Jarfel turns away, thinking to himself about Miri. She protests that she thought he'd be happy for them, but King Jarfel snaps that vague stories like that are of no use to him. Miri defends herself, saying it's not just her responsibility. Besides, she made sure to tell the other saintesses that she'd be out for a while. Meanwhile, rain continues falling outside the palace window. Suddenly, Miri exclaims and points upward. She tells King Jarfel to look, because thanks to her power, the rain has started to stop. King Jarfel observes the clearing weather and says it's as expected of her. King Jarfel brings up how since agriculture is thriving there, he assumes she bought a large amount of vegetables. Miri admits she ate most of them in the car, so the only ones left are souvenirs for her father and the others. Then King Jarfel stands by wagons loaded with produce and announces he's confiscating those. Miri reacts in shock, asking why he would do that. King Jarfel sits among the vegetables and says of course he did, demanding to know whose fault she thinks it is that his reputation has plummeted. Miri is stunned. Meanwhile, in a quiet room of the Riverside Palace, King Forrest reflects on his past. He's been searching for his sister ever since she was taken from the orphanage. Ever since the Riverside Kingdom took him in, he's been scrambling to reach as high a position as possible. He figured the more power he had, the easier it would be to get information about her. Flaffer is amazed as King Forrest continues his story. In the meantime, the former king came to think highly of him and appointed him as his successor. But even after becoming king, Forrest couldn't obtain any information about Flaffer. As a final gamble, he headed to the Harvest Kingdom to search for her himself. He thought she might have been sold to some merchant, or perhaps that she wasn't even alive anymore. King Forrest tells Flaffer he found her along the way. Flaffer is deeply moved, realizing he was searching for her that hard all this time. King Forrest continues his confession. When he saw Flaffer collapsed, his intuition told him he had to save her. At first, he just intended to help, but as they spent time together, he found himself more and more drawn to her. And to think that she was actually his sister, turns out his intuition back then wasn't wrong after all. Then someone calls out Lady Four's name. King Forrest tells Flaffer he wants her to get engaged to him. Flaffer's eyes go wide with shock. Meanwhile, behind them, Aqua appears in the doorway calling out congratulations. Flaffer just stands there completely stunned, processing the word engaged. King Forrest declares there's no one else he would marry but Lady Four. Aqua comments that he finally said it, and Flaffer's face shows her overwhelmed happiness. But suddenly Flaffer freezes. She tries to process what's happening. His Majesty Forrest and Big Brother are the same person, and they're talking about getting engaged and married. Flaffer's brain completely overloads and she can't keep up anymore. She just collapses right onto the couch. Aqua and King Forrest both rush to her side, calling out her name in concern. Meanwhile, Miri cries out calling for her father. Duke Balmal rushes over to her asking what's wrong. Through tears, Miri tells him that her uncle did something terrible. Duke Balmel demands to know if his brother did something to her, but then Miri explains that her uncle took it from her. Duke Balmel tries to rationalize that no matter how much his brother might act that way, surely he wouldn't go that far. Then he realizes his brother took them, snatched away all the souvenir vegetables. Miri keeps crying about how her uncle did something terrible, and the word vegetables just echoes in Duke Balmel's mind. Miri explains that her uncle said it was punishment for traveling without permission and took every single vegetable she bought, the vegetables that were supposed to be a gift for her father too. Duke Balmel processes the whole situation, so Miri was crying that hard just because she lost the souvenir she had for him. Miri sniffles that it was just so frustrating. Duke Balmel acknowledges the situation and thinks about that brother of his. His expression hardens as he declares he'll show no mercy for making such a kind-hearted Miri cry. Miri asks if he's going to make Uncle go gaffing for her, and Duke Balmel assures her he'll definitely get him back. She should just wait a little longer. The farmer asks Miri how the Riverside Kingdom was by the way, and Miri begins to explain. Duke Balmel ponders the meaning of this. There shouldn't be a saint in that country. Miri reflects on her situation. She couldn't show off her power in the Riverside Kingdom. Is the Harvest Kingdom really the only place where Miri can take the credit? She must think of her next move. Duke Balmel makes his declaration. No matter what it takes, he's gonna drag his brother from the throne and become king himself. Later on, Flaffer sits peacefully as someone asks if she's calm now. She responds that somehow she actually is. Then King Forst appears. Flaffer nervously asks if it's really alright for him to marry someone like her, given his position as king. King Forst tells her that to this country, she's a savior. No one would object to having her as his queen. Flaffer's eyes widen in complete shock. She hesitantly responds that she doesn't really recall saving the country though, but someone points out that by growing vegetables every single day, she's saving the entire nation, not just the royal palace. Flaffer explains that farming, or rather playing in the mud, is just a hobby of hers. The conversation continues on a palace balcony overlooking the city. Someone mentions that whether it's just a hobby or not, Flaffer is actually solving the food shortage. Besides, it's thanks to Lady Frora that the constant rain has stopped. King Forst insists that she may not realize it, but she's saving this country. Flaffer reflects on the situation. She was just having fun playing with nature and hoping to make His Majesty Forst happy. She was simply happy about that. Then the dark-haired woman speaks up, saying that considering Flaffer's achievements, she doesn't think there's any issue with Flaffer dating His Majesty. She continues that in the near future, they'll find the right timing to announce that Flaffer is a saint and just how much she's contributed to this country. The dark-haired woman adds that as for her, she thinks Flaffer's feelings for each other matter way more than what the world thinks. Flaffer's eyes start to water as she admits that if it were just based on her feelings alone, she'd want to be with His Majesty Forst forever. And King Forst reacts pretty emotionally to her words. Then the two of them embrace joyfully, and Flaffer's just completely overwhelmed with happiness. She reflects that even though it's always been Milady, until now, having her big brother actually call her by her name without any honorifics means absolutely everything to her. King Forst asks Flaffer if from now on she could stop calling him Your Majesty and just use his name. Flaffer responds with total surprise. She stammers that it's so sudden. King Forst looks away, and Flaffer immediately realizes he's disappointed. She quickly says it troubles her to see him make such a disappointed face. Flaffer tries calling his name emotionally, struggling through her tears as she manages to say Lord Forst. Her face is completely filled with tears as she looks at him, but King Forst just smiles gently at her. Flaffer tells him that for now, calling him Lord Forst is just fine. King Forst promises he'll do his best so that one day she'll feel comfortable calling him by name without any title. The next morning, Flaffer wakes up naturally in her bed and just lies there thinking about what happened with Lord Forst. She confirms to herself that yesterday wasn't a dream, and then the reality of it all hits her, so she rolls around happily in bed. Aqua enters the room and greets Flaffer, noticing she's already awake this morning. Flaffer responds that she is. Aqua asks how she'd like to spend her time since there are no visits to the domestic farms scheduled for today. Meanwhile, while taking a shower, Flaffer reflects on how happy she was about what they talked about yesterday, thinking about the revelation that she was the brother Forst loved so much, and how he's been searching for her all this time. Her heart felt so tight with emotion. Flaffer wants to tell him thank you for finding her over and over. She wants to convey these feelings to Lord Forst even more. She also wants to apologize for the trouble she caused back then, like falling asleep at the bathhouse the other day. She asks Aqua if there's a good way to thank him. Aqua reacts with an internal note about how cute Flaffer is being, then suggests something. Aqua suggests serving homemade sweets during her tea time with His Majesty. Flaffer is surprised at the idea of making sweets. Aqua explains that instead of leaving it to the palace chefs, why not try making them herself today? Flaffer worries since she's never cooked before and asks if she can really do it. But Aqua encourages her, saying that serving something handmade with love would surely delight His Majesty, offering her full support. Flaffer responds hopefully, asking if that's really true. Then Flaffer and Aqua get ready to make cookies together, both dressed in cooking outfits. The kitchen is set up with all the necessary equipment and ingredients laid out. Aqua suggests they make cookies that are easy even for beginners. Flaffer mentions she's had those before. They look at the cooking supplies with bowls and measuring tools ready. Flaffer asks if they should start measuring, but Aqua tells her to just throw the ingredients in. The two of them work together on the cookies. Aqua follows along from a recipe book, while Flaffer mixes the dough in a bowl. Things get a bit chaotic as Flaffer struggles with the mixing, working up a sweat trying to get the consistency right. She admits it's quite difficult, but Aqua encourages her to do her best at her own pace. As they continue working, Aqua instructs Flaffer to shape the cookies into hearts while thinking of the person she's making them for. Flaffer says she'll try making them while thinking of Lord Forst, then suddenly notices her chest is tightening up again. She worries that she might have fallen ill, but says she doesn't want to be examined by the royal palace's chief physician. Aqua reassures her that it isn't an illness, so she'll be fine. After they finish preparing the cookies, they look at the results through the window. Aqua tells Flaffer she did a wonderful job, but Flaffer says it's all thanks to Aqua teaching her. Aqua explains that all that's left is to bake the cookies, but there's a risk of burns, so they should let the royal chefs handle it. Later, Flaffer enters King Forst's office where he's working at his desk. She calls out to him, and he tells her to come in. King Forst notes that it's already tea time, and Flaffer mentions that she brought a special treat today. He asks what it is. King Forst looks at the platter of heart-shaped cookies Flaffer brought and asks what they are. He notes that the chef was the one who grilled them, then he realizes and asks if Flaffer made them for him. She confirms she did. King Forst asks if he can eat them, and Flaffer says she'd love for him to. King Forst takes a bite of the cookie and says it's delicious. The two of them sit together having tea, and King Forst reflects that he's a lucky man, thinking about how the day would come when he could eat cookies this delicious. Meanwhile, Aqua stands nearby observing them, telling King Forst there's no issue with Lady Flaffer, and that he should please continue to enjoy the cookies. But suddenly, Flaffer makes a pained sound. King Forst immediately asks what's the matter. King Forst tells Flaffer she's looking pretty unwell and offers to feed her. Flaffer protests, insisting he really doesn't have to go that far, but there's already a basket of cookies sitting nearby as Forst asks if she's actually gonna eat. Flaffer confirms she will and double-checks if he's really sure about this, and he says of course. She reluctantly agrees, and then Forst tells her to just open her mouth, feeding her a cookie in this weirdly intimate moment with sparkles surrounding them and everything. King Forst tells Flaffer this is his payback and instructs her to say ah. Meanwhile, Flaffer's thinking to herself how absolutely embarrassing this whole thing is. The two of them stay close together as Forst keeps feeding her, and then Flaffer calls out to him, thanking him, getting all emotional as she reflects on everything they've done together up until now. Then King Forst tells Flaffer he'd be happy if she'd stay with him forever, reaffirming they'll be together forever. Flaffer just stands there looking totally moved by his words. The scene shows the three of them together with Aqua present as well, and the panel closes with this wide shot of the palace exterior against the sky. But back in the Harvest Kingdom, at a certain point the vegetables grown at the royal palace became completely subpar, and on top of that, persistent rain just keeps falling. In the palace, people are discussing recent events when someone mentions they saw Frawl out in the Riverside Kingdom, which surprises the others. Another person admits they thought for sure Frawl had died in the gutter out in the wasteland. Meanwhile, someone's just taking a nap looking totally carefree while an angry female figure fumes about how they're going through such a hard time. A man examines the withered vegetables in the palace grounds, suspecting something about them based on his intuition. Suddenly, the man bites into a vegetable dramatically and recognizes the flavor immediately, declaring this surging vitality is unmistakable. This is the taste of the vegetables they used to grow at the royal palace. A dark-haired figure realizes with total frustration that until now, the vegetables and the weather were all thanks to Frawl's power. He curses in anger at the revelation. At the gates of the Harvest Kingdom castle, someone confirms they're heading to the Riverside Kingdom. Meanwhile, inside the corridor, People are preparing to depart when one of them asks if they'll be alright with so few people, but another guy reassures them it's no problem. Then a man with dark hair and a mustache explains they gotta proceed in secret, since this expedition can't become public knowledge or else the citizens would find out it's to bring back Frawl, the woman they were supposed to have exiled. Someone asks about the ones riding in the carriage over there. The cap-wearing figure tells them not to worry, explaining they're intelligence agents who operate in the shadows. The other person acknowledges this, but then the cap-wearing man adds with a smirk that they're actually just some underworld thugs he hired to take Frawl away. 3 intimidating men are shown standing together, clearly the hired muscle for this operation. The man on the right declares that this country is currently in a state of emergency, continuing that it's at times like these that the leader of the nation must act. The cap-wearing figure responds that His Majesty Jarble is the pride of their nation. Another person agrees and tells them to please head out. Then someone comments that she was so easily deceived. The carriage departs in the rain as the plan unfolds. Once they successfully recapture Frawl, they'll throw her into the carriage and lock her straight away in the palace dungeon, where she must continue to manifest her holy power until the day she dies. The passenger in the carriage tells the driver he wants to ask him one thing, posing the strange question about whether the driver has ever felt any charm from Frawl as a woman. The driver laughs and says he must be joking, claiming he's never seen a woman so hideous. The passenger laughs in agreement and says even for him, that woman is out of the question, describing her as skin and bones and creepy to boot. The driver agrees enthusiastically, adding that even when he accidentally touched her before, he felt absolutely no interest at all. The 2 men just keep mocking Frawl as they travel. Eventually the carriage arrives at its destination, and crowds of people fill the streets. The 2 men observe the scene, with one commenting that it's like a completely different country than before. The other notes it's just like the Harvest Kingdom from a short while ago. They examine a display of fresh, vibrant vegetables, and one of them realizes with certainty that these vegetables mean Frawl is definitely here. At the marketplace, the leader figure tells his men that everything's going exactly as planned. He says he's counting on them. The 3 men respond with determination, one telling him to leave it to them while another vows intensely that he'll definitely get Erfurfur back. Meanwhile, Flaffer reaches up joyfully toward the bright sky, sighing contentedly as she notes what a beautiful day it is, commenting that it feels so good. Flaffer's clearly thriving and healing in her new life in the Riverside Kingdom, completely unaware of the danger heading her way. Later, Flaffer lies peacefully in the grass, reflecting on how completely different her body feels now compared to back in the Harvest Kingdom. She realizes she never would notice this change if she hadn't come to the Riverside Kingdom. Back in Harvest, she just accepted feeling sluggish and weak as normal. After a day of farm work, Flaffer walks back with Marasha and Aqua. Flaffer exclaims that today was so much fun and she feels totally recharged, and Marasha tells her good work today with a gentle smile. Then Aqua tells them she'll go arrange for a carriage, and the other person agrees. King Forrest and Flaffer stand together looking out at the scenery when suddenly someone calls out to Lady Flaffer from behind. Flaffer's expression shifts to surprise. 3 thugs rush forward with weapons drawn, and someone yells out asking who goes there. The attackers charge straight at Flaffer. She cries out in shock as the men close in, while guards and bystanders scatter and react to the sudden assault. Meanwhile, Marasha calls out to Master Flaffer in alarm, and someone asks if she's okay. A guard responds shakily as Flaffer sits on the ground being held protectively by Aqua, with Marasha and guards surrounding them. Flaffer wonders who those attackers were, completely confused by what just happened. Later at Marasha's farm stand, one of the men from the Harvest Kingdom demands to know why she won't sell to him when he's offering to pay. Marasha apologizes but explains they don't allow bulk sales. She gestures to the vegetables and tells them that the vegetables grown here belong to everyone, so buying them all up is prohibited. Then the man on the right asks if she's not from this country. The man declares they're from the Harvest Kingdom, and Marasha says she sees, then informs them of a law that was recently passed. She explains that when leaving the country, customs duties are applied to any vegetables obtained here. The man reacts with shock, asking since when such a rule was established. Marasha tells them if they have a complaint, to take it up with the royal palace. She adds that she doesn't know anything about that. The man just stands there frustrated, unable to accomplish his mission. Back at Marasha's farm, the subordinate near the carriage asks what the orders are. The leader mutters about meeting up with the agents and heading to the palace to negotiate. One of the Harvest Kingdom men stands with his arms crossed, clearly frustrated. He asks what they mean and whether the target was there, but someone reports that the plan was a failure as the group walks away from the farm. The subordinate explains they managed to locate it, but the security network was way beyond anything they imagined. The leader realizes they're already in the palm of the government's hand. He says they'll need to rethink their strategy, his hand clenching in frustration. Then the leader gives them all a special assignment, promising the reward will be increased even further if they succeed. Meanwhile, back at the Riverside Palace, voices call out for Lady Flaffer urgently. Someone calls out in the morning to wake Flaffer, and she responds sleepily. Flaffer stretches energetically in bed, telling Aqua she's just relieved she woke up feeling good today. Aqua asks from the doorway if something happened. Flaffer confirms something did, noting this is quite unexpected. Aqua informs Flaffer that His Majesty the King of Harvest has come to visit at such an early hour, and Flaffer reacts with shock. But Aqua urgently grabs Flaffer and tells her she must not take a single step out of this room. Flaffer asks what she means, saying it's an emergency and they have to stop Lord Forst. Aqua explains that if Lord Forst loses his temper and they get into a huge fight, it'll be a disaster. She speculates that this visit might be about Lady Flaffer, and if King Jarfel decides to use force and kidnap her, there's no telling what might happen. She notes that His Majesty King Jarfel is the type who will use any means necessary to get what he wants. Aqua tells Flaffer that's all the more reason for her to stay put, and Flaffer looks down, clearly worried. But then Aqua reconsiders, realizing it might actually be way more dangerous to stay here, and urgently calls out to Lady Flaffer, saying they need to get to His Majesty right now. Flaffer asks if it's really okay, and Aqua explains that if they're dealing with the type who'll use any means necessary, they might try to snatch her the second she's separated from His Majesty. It should be way harder to kidnap her if she stays right by the king's side. Later on, Aqua tells Flaffer she was able to make this call thanks to Lady Furifur. Flaffer says Aqua's pretty sharp, and Aqua thanks her, then declares she's making Lady Furifur's safety her top priority, meaning she's gonna ignore His Majesty's instructions this time. Aqua reminds Flaffer that first things first, she needs to change her clothes immediately since there's no way she can have an audience with another country's king while wearing pajamas. Flaffer agrees and says she'll get changed right away. The two rush through the palace hallways, and as Flaffer looks around, she realizes King Forst isn't there. The Harvest Kingdom men burst into what they think is the right room, and one of them says the targets might have fled somewhere. Another man declares he's not letting all that money get away, he'll find them no matter what. Meanwhile, the guards investigate inside, while Flaffer and Aqua realize that was way too close. Flaffer understands this means they were actually trying to capture her. Then one of the men notices there are gold coins scattered everywhere. The men's attention shifts completely. One guy says forget the kidnapping. This is worth way more than the reward they're getting. Another agrees and says they should just grab these and bolt. Flaffer is absolutely stunned. Aqua grabs Flaffer and tells her they need to go right now. Flaffer mourns her precious treasures as they escape, lamenting that she went through all the trouble of lining them up so nicely. Later, Forst finds Flaffer in the hallway and holds her, telling her he's so glad she's safe. The dark-haired advisor informs His Majesty that there's an intruder in Lady Flaffer's room, confirming the guards should be apprehending them by now. Forst explains that he initially instructed Aqua not to let Flaffer out of the room, but something felt off. He intuitively judged that to be dangerous. He sent the guards to Flaffer's room immediately. Meanwhile, Flaffer is upset about her treasures. Forst asks if she means the gold coins, and Flaffer confirms, saying even though she went through all the trouble of decorating so beautifully. But then Forst thinks it over. He notes the intruder's objective is likely Flaffer herself. There's no way they'd be tempted by the gold coins sitting right in front of them. Suddenly, Aqua addresses His Majesty. Aqua reports that she heard the kidnappers are calling off their plan and are planning to skip town after scraping together some gold coins. Forst looks confused. He says the ones who tried to kidnap Flaffer were incompetent. Later on, Forst decides they should keep this from King Harvest for now. The dark-haired advisor asks if he's not going to tell the Harvest King they already caught the kidnappers, but Forst says that keeping quiet should give them the upper hand in the negotiations. Then Forst tells Flaffer that depending on the situation, he might have her participate in the talks. He knows it's sudden, but he needs her to conceal her identity and blend in with the guards. Flaffer gets excited and says she'll make sure to stay well hidden. She even compares it to hide and seek. Meanwhile, Aqua watches and thinks to herself that she's relieved to see Lady Flaffer staying so calm. But Aqua warns Forst that the problem is King Jarfel, and he must not let the man provoke him. Forst acknowledges this, then tells Flaffer that as long as she's by his side, he'll be fine. Aqua gently pats Flaffer's head, and then Forst and Flaffer share a tender moment together. Flaffer thinks to herself that it's not like she's not worried about King Jarfel at all, but her heart is racing for a completely different reason. She reassures herself that everything will be alright because Lord Forrest is by her side, so she's sure everything will work out fine. Forrest tells Flaffer they should get going, and the two prepare to head to the meeting. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the grand throne room of the Harvest Kingdom. King Jarfel sits on his throne with guards lined up on both sides. Forrest and another noble figure from Riverside approach down the hall for the diplomatic meeting, while Flaffer watches from her concealed position among the guards. In the grand throne room of Riverside Kingdom, King Jarfel arrives with his entourage and bows before King Forrest. Jarfel says he's truly grateful for the hospitality despite his sudden visit. Meanwhile, Flaffer's disguised among the guards, and she's thinking this whole thing seemed like a matter of great urgency, telling herself to think nothing of it. She observes that Lord Forrest is speaking so calmly and just hopes this doesn't turn into a fight. Then the scene continues as Jarfel gets straight to business. He tells King Forrest he'll be blunt. He wishes to import food from his country. Someone asks why that is. So Jarfel explains that the Harvest Kingdom is currently plagued by constant rain and abnormal weather that even the Saints' powers cannot contend with. If this situation continues, they'll eventually fall into a food shortage. Forrest acknowledges that it sounds quite serious. Jarfel declares they must find a way to overcome this crisis, which is why they humbly ask to borrow Riverside's nation's strength. Forrest considers this carefully. But then Jarfel proposes they trade at a rate of 1 gold coin per crate of vegetables. He gets agitated and points out that the average monthly salary of their people is only about 2 gold coins, calling any higher price absurd. Forrest responds that until now, Riverside has been buying vegetables from the Harvest Kingdom at 2 gold coins per crate, and he was thinking of trading at half that price. He adds that their country is still unable to supply enough food to all its citizens, so they won't be satisfied unless they trade at a fair price. Jarfel looks distressed at this response. Jarfel thinks to himself that negotiations for the vegetables seem difficult, but if he can pull the conversation toward Flaffer from here, things might work in his favor. He asks if the vegetables grown in Riverside's country are truly worth that price, saying he finds it hard to believe that anything harvested in a land where it does nothing but rain could be decent. Forrest confidently tells him there's no need for concern and asks if he'd like to try a sample. Jarfel responds that he certainly is confident and agrees to have some. Jarfel tastes the vegetables and yells out that they're way more delicious than he anticipated. He focuses on the flavor for a second and notices something strange. They taste exactly like the vegetables harvested back in his own country. Meanwhile, Flaffer watches from her hidden position, thinking to herself that normally she'd be happy to have her vegetables praised, but right now she doesn't feel happy at all. Something about this whole situation just doesn't sit right with her. Suddenly, Jarfel becomes distressed and declares this is a grave problem. He announces there's a possibility that the saint they exiled from their country is hiding somewhere in this land. He goes on to explain that the saint who was in their country, Flaffer, abused her power to turn the weather into this nightmare. Forrest asks what on earth he means by that, but the hooded figure just continues building his accusation against the exiled saint. King Jarfel keeps going with his accusation, declaring the truth is that this recent abnormal weather is all Flaffer's doing. Jarfel explains it was a painful decision, but he had no choice except to exile her from the country. He tried to encourage reflection in the dungeon, but there was simply no room for rehabilitation. Then the 3 noble saintesses who had accompanied Flaffer see through the deception and call out that this is nothing but lies. But Jarfel presses his point anyway, asking why Forrest thinks the Riverside Kingdom cleared up in the first place. An advisor among Forrest's court sighs and admits if that's the case, then the whole story changes. Jarfel declares it's because the sinner Forai plotted to entrap the Kingdom of Harvest by gathering the rain clouds from the Riverside Kingdom and bringing them to their country. He asks rhetorically whether it's really acceptable for her to monopolize the vegetables harvested through those blessings. Jarfel tells them to listen well. His country has 2 demands. First, half of all vegetables harvested in the Riverside Kingdom from now on must be delivered to them free of charge. Second, the moment the criminal Flaffer is discovered, they have to report it to him immediately. Jarfel lets out an amused sound at his own ultimatum. Forrest notices and asks what's so funny. Someone asks what he means by that. Jarfel, sitting on his throne, states that it seems the facts as he knows them are completely different from what's being presented. Then Forrest begins his counter. He mentions that when he visited the Harvest Kingdom previously, it was incomparably more radiant than his own country at the time. He continues, explaining that on his way home, he rescued a woman who was on the verge of death. Her body was covered in bruises, her clothes were in tatters, and she was suffering from malnutrition. Jarfel asks what of it. But then Forrest asks what he thinks that woman called herself when she woke up a few days later, adding that Jarfel already knows the answer. Suddenly, Jarfel grows distressed, asking who this woman was. He realizes the implication and denies it can be true. Jarfel tries to dismiss it, saying that sounds like nothing more than a story made up to escape his demands, and that he doesn't know anything about it. But someone from Jarfel's side declares it is all the truth. Forrest counters by asking what he would have to gain by telling such a lie, pointing out that to lie during a meeting with the king of another nation is seriously dishonest. Jarfel's advisor argues there's no evidence for King Forrest's claims. Forrest responds calmly to the challenge about evidence. Jarfel questions whether Forrest is sure about this course of action. Someone asks what he might be referring to. Meanwhile, an advisor whispers that this might even put Lord Jalpal's position at risk. Jarfel reacts sharply, demanding to know what they're talking about. Forrest orders someone to bring her over. Meanwhile, someone questions whether she wasn't supposed to be hiding, but Aqua reassures Flaffer that the game of hide-and-seek is over now. She tells Flaffer it's time to answer everything they ask. Aqua declares that everyone here will protect Lady Flaffer no matter what, and now is the time to strike back. Flaffer quietly agrees, though someone remarks that this is getting a little scary. Then Flaffer steps forward into view alongside the noble saintesses, now revealed in a white ceremonial dress. One of the saintesses addresses Jarfel, noting it's been a long time. Jarfel asks who she is, and Flaffer identifies herself as Fror, the one who was living in his country's dungeon. But Jarfel protests that King Forrest must not lie to him. He insists the Fror who was in his country did not have such a beautiful appearance. Jarfel thinks to himself that if she were such a beautiful woman, he would wanted her as his own fiancée. He remembers the woman he imprisoned was scrawny with a body like a bag of bones, and while there may be a slight resemblance, he insists this must be a different person. Forrest explains it simply means she's recovered that much energy. He repeats that when he first found her, her appearance was completely different from how she looks now. Someone calls this unbelievable. Then Jarfel announces he has a question for this self-proclaimed Fror. He demands she state the name of the cook who served her until the moment of her exile, and the name of the coachman who drove her away. Flaffer responds that she doesn't know their names, as they never introduced themselves to her. Suddenly, someone identifies the person trying to hide in the back as the driver. Another voice points out that the old guy in the armor was the one in charge of the food. A character reacts with visible shock. Flaffer's face twists in anger as she recalls how the driver's reckless driving made her feel sick that day. She declares she's going to spill everything. She can say whatever she wants now. Then the accusations pour out. The driver threw her out of the carriage after threatening to kill her if she threw up, so she jumped out herself, and they just left her behind. But that's not all. The person in charge of food was awful too. Flaffer demands to know if he didn't stomp on her bread right in front of her, and serve her things covered in mud. Flaffer wonders what else she knows about King Jalpal. The two men from Harvest Kingdom react uncertainly, asking if this is working, and if this is how they should be doing it. Suddenly Flaffer gets excited. She realizes she has momentum now and needs to tell everyone about His Majesty next. She strikes a dramatic pose and cheerfully announces that King Jalpal's type is girls with a bit of a plump figure, preferring that over someone bony like her. A male courtier's face contorts in shock as he demands to know why she's saying that now. But Flaffer continues speaking, hesitating for a moment before remembering something. She smiles brightly and adds that's why she always looks forward to going to that shop called Shokin. The male advisor's face fills the panel in a dramatic shocked reaction. The throne room remains tense as someone recalls that King Jalpal said seeing Flaffer first made him think there would be even higher level women at the brothel, which got him all fired up. Suddenly Flaffer covers her mouth with both hands, looking distressed as she tries to stop herself from speaking further. At the bottom of the stairs, the dark-haired advisor, King Forrest, and Flaffer stand together. Someone explains that Jalpal claimed it was an important state affair, so he'd occasionally take the cooks and the coachmen along too. This gave everyone the impression he was taking his duties to the country quite seriously. In the wide throne room, someone reacts with total confusion. Flaffer asks if she said something wrong, but suddenly multiple people are trying to stop her now. Someone addresses Lord Forrest while Flaffer apologizes, admitting she actually doesn't know much about King Jalpal. Someone tells her they get it now and pleads with her not to say anything more. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the panel, male officials and guards react to the revelations about King Jalpal, and the dark-haired female advisor thinks to herself that this was a terrifyingly blunt revelation. Various courtiers and officials react to the bombshell revelations. Someone insists this is a major problem if what she just said is true. Then another voice notes that if this is true, the coachman won't get off scot-free either. Others start questioning whether that person is really Flor, noting her appearance is completely different, and she was as cute as an angel. The panel shows the beautiful, radiant Flaffer, alongside images of the uncomfortable-looking coachman and guards. Someone insists this must be a trap to frame them, but then another voice questions King Force directly, asking if she's really not Flor. Jarfel reacts with visible alarm. Force responds calmly that if Jarfel doubts them that much, they have no choice but to show him definitive proof. He orders his guards to bring in the ones they captured earlier. The captured men are brought forward, bound and on their knees in the throne room. Someone addresses King Jarfel, asking why those men are being held and pointing out that they were the intelligence agents he hired. King Jarfel snaps back, telling them to be quiet and shut up for a moment. Down in the ornate throne room below, King Force reveals that he had the men seized because they were trying to steal gold coins scattered around Flaffer's room. He questions whether Jarfel's country's intelligence agency engages in petty theft as well. Meanwhile, someone asks if these men are really intelligence agents, and King Jarfel reacts with visible alarm at the accusation. King Jarfel insists that while they are his country's intelligence agents, he never gave them such orders. But King Force responds that since Jarfel says they're supposed to be executed anyway, he should feel free to dispose of them right here in Riverside Kingdom. Someone adds this naturally, as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. Then the light-haired advisor turns to the bound men and asks if they have any final words as death row inmates. One of the captured men curses, realizing they've been set up by the idiots. The interrogation continues as someone asks what the details of their request were this time. The advisor notes that they must be such heinous villains that both nations had to cooperate just to catch them. The bound man in the center confesses that they were ordered to kidnap the criminal Flaffer. He explains that if they succeeded, they'd get 20 gold coins and their criminal records would be wiped clean. He gets angry, protesting that the idiots scattered those coins just to frame them as thieves. At the bottom of the scene, someone realizes the gold coins were fakes. Flaffer hesitantly admits that she was the one who put those gold coins in the room just for decoration, but then the dark-haired advisor confirms that unfortunately, they're the real deal. One of the bound men gives up completely, telling them to just execute him or do whatever they want. Meanwhile, someone nearby comments that they're so appalled they're speechless. In a small side panel, someone scolds Flaffer about how they've warned her so many times not to display all those gold coins, but she protests that they're so pretty. Then Flaffer's eyes appear in close-up as she addresses Lord Jarfel directly. At the bottom, the courtiers and officials react in shock. They question whether King Jarfel hiring a heinous criminal is even heard of. Someone asks if everything up until now was a lie perpetrated by the warlike Flaffer, who is actually the real saint. Another voice wonders if the recent bad weather could have been brought upon them by King Jarfel's actions. King Jarfel himself collapses to the floor making distressed sounds, clearly overwhelmed by the revelations. King Jarfel calls out Flaffer's name from where he is. In a dramatic moment, King Jarfel reaches forward and demands that she hand over the gold coins. He tells her not to just stand there looking pretty. The scene cuts to a decorative pillow with gold coins stacked on top of it, and Flaffer makes this happy little sound. Then the panel zooms in on Flaffer's face as she's holding the gold coins with the most delighted expression, saying she's so glad the gold coins are back. Meanwhile, back in Flaffer's room, she's down on her hands and knees picking up scattered gold coins from the floor one by one. Aqua watches her with this concerned look and calls out to Lady Frawl. Flaffer asks if Aqua seriously intends to rearrange every single gold coin, and Aqua admits that's the plan. But then Aqua protests and refuses, saying she's getting a little tired. Flaffer asks her to help out. Aqua remains firm and says the answer is no. She hopes this incident taught Flaffer that gold coins aren't meant for decoration, but Flaffer counters that the bad guys were caught and peace has returned. Suddenly, someone yells that they're coming. King Forrest appears at the doorway and tells Flaffer there's something he wants to talk about. King Forrest asks if Flaffer is lining them up again. Flaffer happily confirms she absolutely needs this for the room's decoration. King Forrest simply says he sees. Then King Forrest asks Aqua if she's just going to stand there and watch. Aqua states she cannot approve of this action, but King Forrest tells Flaffer he'll help her. Aqua asks if His Majesty is in his right mind. King Forrest tells her not to say that, pointing out that thanks to this gold coin, Flaffer was saved. King Forrest says he certainly hopes so, though he doubts anything like that will ever happen again. Meanwhile, in the throne room, guards escort the bound criminals away, but one of them struggles and yells at the idiots to let go of him. Then, an advisor addresses King Jiaopal, stating that no matter how he looks at it, this issue cannot be overlooked. A Harvest Kingdom official tells the criminals they'll return to their country and receive the appropriate punishment. Outside at the palace exterior, the guards drag the men away while King Jiaopal apologizes, saying he's truly sorry that things have come to this. But King Force tells them to take these villains back with them as well, otherwise their country will lose all face. His advisor asks if he's sure about this. King Force lays out his condition in exchange. They must publicly announce that For is a true saint who contributes to the Harvest Kingdom and expose the misdeeds of Lord Jiaopal. If they accept it, he'll agree to trade vegetables at a later date, which makes one of the men react with shock. Then the guards bow deeply before King Force and Flaffer on the palace steps, promising they'll certainly carry it out as someone thanks them. But Flaffer suddenly realizes the discussion might already be wrapping up, and one of the guards mentions that at this rate, they won't be able to take the vegetables home right away after all. King Force notices something off and asks Flaffer what's wrong, but Flaffer stops him and asks him to please wait a moment. Flaffer brings up that the Harvest Kingdom is currently struggling with food shortages. She says she knows all too well how painful it is to collapse from hunger, and asks if it's really not possible to share even a little bit of food. King Force responds with exasperation while the guards just stand by waiting. Meanwhile, Flaffer gives a small, hopeful laugh. Then Flaffer announces that for this time only, this isn't gonna be a trade but support. She tells them today's harvest from the royal gardens will be ready soon, and they can take all of it with them. The three guards react with overwhelming gratitude and thank them profusely. Later in the palace hallway, the guards walk away with their provisions. Someone asks King Force if he's truly sure about this decision, but King Force replies that he doesn't mind since it was Flaffer's earnest wish after all.